Hello there and welcome to another episode of Eric the Car Guy. Today we have a 2001 Mitsubishi Eclipse with a 3-liter V6 engine. It's not turbocharged. That needs a radiator. So if you'd like to come along, take a look at how I'm going to do it. Come on in. Check it out. Here we go. Okay, the first thing that I like to do whenever I'm performing this service is to turn the heater knob all the way to hot, but do not turn the fan on. And the reasoning for this is there's a heater control valve that controls the flow of coolant through the heater core inside the dashboard, and that is controlled by the heater control knob. Whenever you're doing any kind of cooling system work on any car, I think it's a good idea to make sure that you bleed any potential air that may be in the system out of the system whenever you perform the repair, so that there aren't any air pockets trapped inside the cooling system when you're done with whatever it is you need to do. And of course you would also need to open the hood. Now we don't need to jack this car way up. In fact, in my opinion, this radiator is fairly easy to access. But I do like to jack the front of the car up so that I can put a pan under it so I can drain whatever coolant may still be in the radiator. Now to raise this vehicle up and put jack stands under the lift points behind the front wheels, I'm going to go right about under here to lift it up. Next thing you want to do is drain the radiator of any other fluid that's in it, and also try to get to any electrical connectors or any other things that you're going to need to access from underneath that you would not normally be able to access from up top. Okay, so there aren't any hoses or anything per se on this that you can only access from down here. This lower hose you can undo from down here. Actually, it would probably be quite easy to undo this hose from down here. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take the radiator out and do this up top, but since this one's down here and easy to access, I think I'm going to do this one down here. For now, what we're going to do is turn this counterclockwise so that we can drain the fluid. As long as I'm here, I'm going to ready this hose to remove by loosening the clamp and the hose itself. Now be careful when you do this. The neck is made out of plastic, so you just want to just grab it and twist it just a little bit. This will make it so that it breaks loose from the radiator. So you don't want to do this so hard that you crush it. You just want to grab it a little bit, or ruin the hose. You could put a hole in the hose. So just grab it lightly and then twist, and then if it doesn't want to move in the spot where you're grabbing, just move it a little bit and keep changing position around the outside until finally it breaks loose. Okay, something that should help the coolant come out a bit faster is just take the radiator cap off. This will release the vacuum on the system and allow it to come out much more rapidly. Next, I'm going to remove this upper air intake, and there are normally 2 plastic rivets, but there's only one in this case. So you just push down on the middle part and pull it out. Should be all you need to do. And with a little wiggle to get this disconnected here from the air box, should take that right out. Next, we're going to remove the upper radiator hose just like we did loosen the lower radiator hose. This one's a little reluctant to come off. So I'll take a little bit of silicone spray and spray around the hose to give it something slippery to move the clamp on. The idea is to get the clamp away. There. Same for the other connection. And this one already seems pretty loose. go ahead and awful lot of corrosion. Next, I'm going to remove the overflow tube, and this you can do a lot of times just with your fingers. Now on the left hand side there's an electrical connection to the fans and the fan controller, and also this harness connection. I'll just take a small pry bar or screwdriver underneath just the plastic part. Don't pry on the wire, but just pull that away. Next, you just, for these connectors, you gotta push down and pull. This other wire goes to the condenser fan. Next, I'm going to close the petcock off on the radiator that's now just about completely drained, and remove the lower radiator hose with my pan underneath the radiator when I remove that hose. For some reason you never seem to get all of it out the radiator drain. There's usually some more, so if you're looking to minimize the mess, do it this way. I'm now going to remove the 4 fasteners that hold the top of the radiator in. Try to lay these to the side so that you know where they went. I mean, it's pretty obvious in some respects, but you can lay them on the side of the car they came off of. Okay, now that the radiator is pretty much just laying there, you can just lift the whole assembly out. And there you have it, old radiator. Okay, now for good measure, I'm going to go underneath, particularly these rusty fasteners, and just hit them with a little bit of penetrating oil. It's these lower ones that are really a problem. The upper ones, not so much. But just to be safe, make sure you get up underneath them. But mostly you're concerned about these rusty guys right here. And just let that soak for a while. Now while that's soaking, I'm going to check the front of the condenser for any debris and remove it. Look, there's an old cicada. And just clean the area in between here, because, wow, there's a lot of cicadas. Take this stuff out of here so that you've got a good flow through your new radiator. There may be a buildup of stuff on the outside of the condenser here. You can take a garden hose and wash it all off. This was on the old radiator. I doubt I'm going to be able to reposition it. But these outer shrouds that are here, try to keep those intact, because they actually help direct air through the radiator itself. Also, if these little rubber grommets remain on the bottom of the radiator, you want to make sure that you take them off, because they won't come with the new one, and reinstall them in the car. They go in these little areas here. And on the opposite side there's another one. So make sure you have them both there for when you install the new radiator. Alright, now that your penetrating oil's had some time to soak in, I use an impact wrench, and honestly this works best. You may break these bolts off. If you do, you need to replace them. Try to keep all the fasteners where they came from, but old radiator, be gone. Now that you have your new radiator, just take a look at it before you get started to make sure that they're the same as the old one. I just lay them up to make the comparison here. Now, the car we're working on is a manual transmission, so it doesn't have cooler lines for the automatic transmission lines. That's no big deal, you just don't hook those up. But other than that, everything looks the same. So we'll get started and put the fan and everything back onto here. Okay, now I'm going to take my fan assembly and just lay it on top of the new radiator. Just for the heck of it, give the blades a spin. You'll know ahead of time whether you're having a electrical problem with a fan before you actually get it in the car and need to take it back out. Okay, now that we have the fans onto the new radiator, we can install it into the car. You want to make sure that these pegs go into the holes down underneath. Do that by feeling around with your hand. And usually if you can get one side, you can just sort of move it around and find the other. Now I just found this little piece of plastic that was actually inside the filler neck. I guess keep an eye out for this stuff. I've never run into it before, but you don't want debris, even of this size, to get down in there because it could clog something up and decrease the radiator's ability to cool the car. Okay, now we'll reinstall our upper brackets. Remember that electrical connection for the fans, extremely important. Okay, now there was a great deal of corrosion on this connection for the upper radiator hose on the engine. I'm going to try to get rid of as much of this as possible. But to avoid any leaks, I'm going to replace the clamp for this. You can take a little bit of crocus cloth like I'm about to, or a piece of sandpaper, and clean that up. Hopefully this will help eliminate any leaks that might occur here. It'd be a shame to go through all this and have a leak. Let's reinstall the hose. This upper clamp didn't seem to cause me as much trouble. And what I try to do, try to reposition the clamp so that it goes back into where it was before you took it off initially. This will help the hose seal a little better, especially if you're reusing the upper hose. But try to put the clamp back in the same position it was when you took it off originally. This will help prevent leaks. Next, I'm going to tighten this other upper clamp that I've replaced. You don't need to tighten this so tight that it's never going to come off again. Just make it nice and snug. Make sure it fits well. You can go ahead and remove the pan for your coolant. Okay, before I go any further, I just want to make sure that the radiator is fitted down into its mounts on the lower side like it's supposed to. In addition to that, check the petcock and give it an extra turn. Sometimes on aftermarket radiators these are loose and you'll have a leak right out of the gate just because this wasn't tightened all the way. So make sure that that's tight. Next you'll want to reinstall the lower radiator hose. And then do the same thing with this clamp as you did with the one up top. And try to get it lined up the way it was before you started. There, now that looks like it's where it's supposed to be. Okay, now I'm going to reinstall this air intake. Reversive way I took it apart, and you'll take this and push this into the up position, stick it back down in there and just make it flush. I use, it's called a spill-free funnel, but it has these special adapters that actually screw onto the top of the radiator, and it's really nice to fill up a cooling system with one of these rather than just dumping it into the top of the radiator. If you don't have one of these and you have to do it in the top of the radiator, no problem. Just take your pan and put it back underneath the car and underneath where you're going to pour the coolant in. That way, if anything's bubbling up or spilling over, it will go into your catch rather than onto the floor. Use this tool. You just put this on in place of the radiator cap, stick it in, and pour coolant in. Now you want to be careful of the type of coolant that you put in, because some vehicle manufacturers have a special coolant. This one takes green coolant, so it's not a problem. But once you get it filled up and it's about to this point, it's time for the next step. The next step for this car is to start it up and let it run. Once again, remember your first step of turning the heater valve or the heater control all the way to hot and then leave the fan off. But at this point, start the car up, leave the radiator cap off, and have your catch ready if you don't have one of those spill-free funnels. At this point, let the car warm up for a little bit, let it stabilize, let it level off, and then we're going to raise the RPMs to about 2,500 RPM and watch for the cooling fans to come on. That way, and during that time, there will be air that will bubble up out of the top of the radiator. And when that's all gone, and the fans come on, put the radiator cap on, check for leaks, we're done. Now this car has some pretty nasty looking coolant in it. Sometimes you can reach the throttle from outside, and you can just raise the RPMs that way. Make sure that both fans are working. Now that I know the system is free of any air, I can put the radiator cap back on and check for leaks. Also top off your overflow and make sure that's full. This one is definitely full. Okay, now that you've got your hose on, or now that you've got the radiator in, check for any leaks, particularly around the lower radiator hose. If it's going to leak, in my experience, this is where it's going to leak. The seal where the hose meets the radiator itself sometimes takes a little bit to seal. Sometimes you have to put another clamp down here. Also check the drain to see if that's okay. And then anywhere else that you might be having an issue. Now we have the radiator in the car, we have the cooling system bled out, and there are no leaks. Next thing to do is, I guess, take it out on a test drive, see if it overheats, see if everything's functioning correctly. We've also made sure that the cooling fans are working properly. Something else I'd like to say is your old coolant really should be disposed of properly. You can pour it back into your empty coolant jugs, anything that you may have left over, and try to bring it to a facility that would accept that. A lot of places I know will just take it. Some places, I don't hear too often where you have to pay for things. Some places may be reluctant to take it, but don't dump it down a storm drain, anything like that, because we want to keep the planet around for a little while longer. Other than that, I'm going to let the car down, take it out for a drive. I hope this video was informative. You can always find me at EricTheCarGuy.com. If you have any further questions, be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'm Eric the Car Guy. See you.